Speaker is Kristi. Help me welcome Kristi.
Perfect, thank you. Hi everybody, my name is Kristi and I'm an alcoholic. I'm also a pillhead. My sobriety date is March 16th, 2015. And I'm already choking up. So today I have 5 years and 6 months. And for an alcoholic pillhead like me, I'm a freaking miracle. My sponsor told me to open up with something good. I don't know if I have anything good, but I got sober in this room, and she tells me that she used to see me in this room loaded off my ass falling asleep, which she probably did because I would take like 10 Valium on the way here, and so by the time it was halfway through the meeting, I would be falling off the chair or falling asleep or whatever. But Safe Harbor does have a special place in my heart. I was lucky enough to meet the man who started this place, Mickey, and he used to have a little sign by the bathrooms over there that said, "Free beer tomorrow." And he said that all the time. And now I notice it's up top here. I kind of got away from coming to meetings here. Excuse me, I have a lot of allergies. I got involved in starting another group and got involved in a lot of service work with that. So I kind of stopped coming to meetings here, but it does have a special place in my heart. If you can kind of figure out, I'm not from Arizona. I'm originally from a little town north of New Orleans, about 30 miles. So when people talk about drinking on Whiskey Row, you don't have nothing to the French Quarter, okay? I mean, there is nothing on Whiskey Row compared to the French Quarter. But anyway, I was born into a family of 4 kids. I'm the youngest and the only girl. They are 15 years, 10 years, and 6 years older than I am. I grew up Catholic, so I'm pretty sure I was a Catholic mistake. My parents were older when they had me. My dad was in his early 40s, and my mom was in her late 30s, maybe 40. And that time, that was old to be having children. I can remember, I was always a frightened kid. And my dad used to work for the gas company in our town. And so he would be on call to go into burning buildings and turn the gas off and crazy things like that. And I remember one of the houses about 3 blocks from where we lived, caught on fire, and it was a pretty bad fire. And so we walked down there. That was like the thing to do. And I see my dad going in the building. And I couldn't have been more than 6, 7, 8. And just being terrified that the building was going to blow up with my dad in it. And some other things happened, and, I was always afraid. And when I was 11, we woke up one morning and my dad had a stroke in the middle of the night. And so we took him to the hospital, and there was only one brother living at home at that point because he was 18. And I can remember being at the hospital and him being very sick. He couldn't move. And then they shipped me off to my aunt and uncle's house. And I loved their house because there were 8 kids in their family, and we just had a ton of fun. And they had a pool, and it was on the Gulf Coast. And so the next thing I know, 2 weeks later, I'm going back to where I grew up, and my dad had died. And I was not really angry at that point, because he was, in my eyes, he was a very good Catholic. He was a member of the crew of KCs and participated in the church and did all this stuff. But, I was remembering asking why. Why did this have to happen? And so going along, I get a little older, and back then, well, my parents would be like 100 now. They didn't grow up talking about feelings. So my mom never really talked to me about my dad after he passed away. And I never really knew anything about him. And so as I got older, I think I started drinking probably the age of 13 or 14, which was, the going age in Louisiana at that time. You could get in a bar at that age probably. And so I made it to high school and getting a little more angry and fighting with my mom and not really into school, except I was popular in high school. I always had a boyfriend. I always had a lot of friends. My house was a place to be. Everybody loved my mom but me. And I was a cheerleader and was doing all these things, but I always felt different, because I can remember after my dad passed away, another cousin brought me, we had a community pool, and so it was the summertime, it was in June, and she brought me to the pool, and they were all my girlfriends that I'd gone to junior high with, and none of them would play with me. They wouldn't come up and talk to me. And I was like, what's going on? And then my cousin said, well, because your dad died, they don't know what to say to you. So after that, I always kind of felt different. Something was wrong that, I'm a kid without a parent. So I made it through high school. I didn't really try that hard. I just kind of skirted along. And so when it comes time to go to college, I didn't have anybody to tell me, oh, well, you have to, there are hours involved, classes are come in hours, and you have to make a schedule, and you have to actually apply to college and do these things that I didn't know. I just kind of showed up at the college, and thank God they let me in. But anyway, so I didn't want to go to school where a lot of my high school people had gone to school. So I went to this college. It was in Lafayette, and it's in the middle of Cajun country. And there were only 2 other girls that went to the school with me there. And one of the girls that went to school with me there, her name was Jamie, and I knew of her in high school, but she was into Future Farmers of America, and she showed goats or whatever the hell you show, and was into 4-H and all these things. And she had a locker below mine, and another friend of mine, we shared a locker. And we would try to get her attention because she would never talk to us. So we would drop our books on her head, and she just would get up and walk off. Well, anyway, we ended up in college together. And she became like the love of my life. And I don't mean in a sexual way. She was like the sister I never had. So we were bumping along in college, going out all the time, getting drunk, and she was a very good student, and I was not. I was kind of skirting along, but I knew I had wanted to go into this particular career that I had had my sights set on as a little kid, and I don't know how I wanted to do this. So I was trying to get into nursing school, or trying to study enough to get into nursing school, and I ended up injuring my back water skiing. I had a herniated disc. So I had to drop out of college, like in March. I went back home, got a little job, started partying, started dating the drummer of a band. We'd follow the band around, and blackouts, drunks, and just crazy stuff. And my friend Jamie was coming home to celebrate our birthdays. Her birthday was November 6th, and mine is November 10th. And she was coming home so we could celebrate that weekend. We were going to be 21. So we were going to go out and party in style. And I got a call on November 8th. And one of my old roommates said, Jamie's been killed in a car accident. I just said, what are you talking about? I said, put her on the phone. Put her on the phone right now. She's coming this weekend. And they said, no, she's been killed in a car accident. And I completely just lost it. I dropped the phone and was inconsolable and crying, and couldn't believe that, my best friend had been killed in a car accident, and she was buried on my 21st birthday. And I really began to have a lot of anger with God. I just, was done at that point. I had watched my mom. My dad had passed away. My mom was a housewife. She didn't work. She'd never driven a car. I watched my mom struggle. She got a job. She managed a jewelry store. She got her driver's license. That was terrifying. I think we probably got our driver's license right around the same time. And So I thought, I don't want to ever have to depend on anyone, anything, any God ever again in my life. So I applied to a nursing school in New Orleans, and I got in. And, I never thought I was smart enough. Never thought I was good enough. And so I ended up graduating, and I only say this, second in my class, and I only say this because I never felt good enough, and I never felt that I could actually achieve anything. Nobody made a big deal of it. My mom really didn't. She was like, yay, you graduated. My brothers didn't really say anything. And I ended up dating this guy that I'd been out on a blind date with about 2 years before, and I thought to my girlfriend that was my roommate in nursing school, I said, if you ever set me up on a blind date again, I will kill you, because he was just an ass. So we ended up dating again. He'd grown up a lot. I'd grown up a little bit. And we get married, and he's in a residency for orthopedic surgeon, to be an orthopedic surgeon, and I'm decided that this career that I wanted, I was going to go for it. So I wanted to be a nurse anesthetist. So this was to do anesthesia for surgeries and epidurals and spinals and all these procedures and C-sections and all these things. So I was in school for that. He was doing his residency. We were doing this stuff at a big hospital in New Orleans called Charity Hospital, and it was destroyed in Hurricane Katrina. But everything you saw there was either drug-related or some kind of drug violence or drinking or a car accident. I mean, that was the place to go initially to get stabilized, and then we shipped your ass to a bigger hospital, or a different hospital, not bigger. It was 25 stories. So the only thing I knew about drug addicts and alcoholics were, they tote guns, they get, they hire or recruit 6-year-olds to watch out so they can sell their drugs on the street corner. The 6-year-olds get killed. I had this weird idea of what a drug addict and an alcoholic looked like. I can remember working in the ICU, and we had this guy, and he was having his esophagus had burst from esophageal varices. That's when your liver gets messed up. And he had a football helmet on his head and this tube down his throat and just projectile vomiting blood everywhere. And we put the football helmet on him because when you start seizing, to keep you from getting brain damage, I mean, it was just horrible. So we both completed school. We decided to get out of there. I had been mugged. I'd had a knife put up to my throat. My car had been broken into numerous times. And so we decided to leave the big city and move to this little town in North Carolina. It was called Sylva, North Carolina. And if you've ever seen Deliverance or The Fugitive, that's where those movies were made. You can actually probably hear banjo music if you go into the woods. So we lived there for 13, 16 years or something. And so my mother moved with us, and his mother moves in, and we moved them in together because we don't want them living with us. And my mother gets sick. And I'd never really had this great relationship with my mom, and she gets lung cancer. So I'm taking care of her. When she dies, I'm kind of like her hospice nurse and her daughter. And so she passes away, and we bring her back to Louisiana, and we bury her, and then I don't really ever grieve for my mom. So at this point, we have one daughter. She's almost 3, and then right after my mom passed away, we got pregnant with another kid and had her the next year. So I start having these massive headaches. I have a lot of allergies. It's even, I don't know if it's worse there. It's more green there. It's just different there. So I ended up having sinus surgery, and I had an infection for an entire year. You could see it on an x-ray. It was this big ball snot in my sinus. And so I was on pain medicine all the time. And that's kind of interesting to work and do anesthesia when you're carrying a backpack full of pills to an operating room. I'm losing my train of thought. So I'm, taking these pills and working and thinking I'm keeping it together and nobody knows, and that's just not the case. So it got really bad. I ended up going to outpatient treatment, and they told my husband she needs to go inpatient treatment, so I agreed to go inpatient treatment. And I loved it at this place. If you saw, what was it, 28 Days or something? It was filmed at this place that I went to. So I loved the people there. I went through the program, did well. Went home for about 2 weeks, went back for another 3-week program, but I never went home and actually worked with someone when I got home because I didn't want to be in this little town and people know that I'm a drug addict, alcoholic. It was just too much for me to bear. So needless to say, when I called to go back to work, they didn't want me back at work. They said, you're not here, and when you're here, we don't know what you're thinking or what you're doing. And so I was, very ashamed of that because I'd worked really hard on this career. I'd worked there almost 10 years. So the shame was just being piled on and on and on me, and I just didn't know how to get rid of it. So things are going along the same way. I'm getting drugs. I can't drink because this man I'm married to doesn't drink. So, and that would be more noticeable, I thought, if I drank, at least you'd smell it on me. So I'm getting pills from all these doctors and psychiatrists, and I never told them the truth. I told them whatever I needed to tell them to get what I wanted. And I ended up going back to treatment in Texas, a little town called Kaufman, Texas. It's about an hour outside of Dallas. So I was there for 5 months. Hated it. Couldn't understand why I had to be around these people, that people just weren't doing it the way I thought they should do it. And so the first opportunity I got to leave, because my husband at the time had come to visit me, I took my credit card out of his wallet. So when it was time to go, they just dropped you off at a bus station. They made you pack your things and drop you off at a bus station. I said, fine. Went in there, bought a bus ticket, and I was just ready to go. And so I met them in Disney World. I didn't even go home. I met my ex and my girls in Disney World. I was able to stay sober 1 more month after that. I was driving up to Asheville, North Carolina to go to meetings because I still couldn't stand to go to meetings in my town. Bless you. And, I came upon this one girl. I'm like, I got to get a sponsor. So I finally got enough courage to ask this girl to sponsor me. And she said, well, I can only take you through step 4. And immediately I thought, oh, my God, she doesn't want to, sponsor me. And I didn't ever think that maybe she hadn't gone further than step 4. So I went right back to doing what I was doing. Never went back to meetings. At this point, I started stealing his prescription pads, and I started forging prescriptions, and I would drive hours to fill a prescription. And if they were suspicious, they would call him and say, somebody's here trying to forge a prescription. Well, he always knew it was me, and he'd call me and say, don't go back. They're looking for you. So I never went back. And so I figured I needed another geographical, is that right? Yeah. Change. So we ended up moving to New Zealand for a year. My girls got out of school in May. We put them right back in. Their year starts in June, so we put them right back in school. And he was working. I did not work. And I went on a field trip with my youngest daughter. It was over a weekend. And he's picking us up. He walks up to the car, or he greets us to get our stuff to put in the car, and he says, you're up to the same shit again, aren't you? Like, what are you talking about? The New Zealand government had sent a letter to our house saying, that I had been going to doctors all over South Island, New Zealand, looking for prescriptions, which I had been. Some stuff you could get over the counter, which I did that too. And so just the shame of all of that, you know. We went to a Christmas party that year with the neighbors, and we're drinking and having fun, and we get home that night, and I'm taking off my clothes, and all these pills fall out of my shirt, and just the look he gave me was like, I just can't believe you cannot stop doing this. And so we come home, and we get back to Silva, and he no longer has a job there because he'd retired there. And so we'd heard about Prescott, Arizona. So I said, I'll go check it out. Maybe if I think you'll like the guy that is looking for another surgeon, then I'll come back and we can both go. So I came out here. I'd never heard of Prescott, Arizona in my life. I don't even know why I was I was like, yeah, that sounds good. I was really interested in going to Prescott, Arizona. It sounded like it would be a good place. And so we ended up moving here in 2008. He left to come early, and I was going to finish out the school year with my daughters in North Carolina, and we were coming home from a basketball practice, and I was driving, get in the driveway. It's my two girls and one of their friends. We get up in the house, and I go upstairs. It was 3 stories, so I go upstairs to my bedroom, and they hear me collapse, and I had a seizure. And so the police and the ambulance come in this little bitty town where I didn't want anybody to know that I was a drug addict and an alcoholic. And it's friends of ours, of course, because it's a little bitty town and we practically know everybody. So I'm sitting in the hospital, and nobody ever came to visit me because my husband was here and my girls were in school. And the shame of all of that stuff, I just could not, I didn't get past it. So we left there, we came here, got the job here, got the girls in school, and I never went to meetings here. I had another seizure here. I'd also had liver issues in Silva that I never told the gastroenterologist. Well, this could be because I take, like 50 pills at a time. I don't know why. What do you think's wrong? I mean, I went to a soccer game that my daughter was in junior high, and she was playing soccer, and I went with an IV in my arm so I could watch her play. She's laughing over here. Play soccer, and I thought, well, it was normal. I'd pick them up from school, and because I could start an IV on myself, or I could get it all going and running. I'd just hang the IV from the coat hanger thing in the car, and just drive around and pick the girls up from school, and just thinking it was all normal, and never realized how crazy people thought I was. But so anyway, so we're here, and my oldest daughter graduates from high school, and she decides she wants to go to school in New Orleans. And I'm thinking, I don't think this is a good idea, but let's let her go. So in the process of all of this, I hook up with this old friend that I had gone to high school with. This is 30 years later now, that I hadn't seen in 30 years, of course, hadn't talked to in 30 years, and start having an affair with this man. Ended up moving to New Orleans to be with him. Left my youngest daughter to start high school on her own. Wanted to come back here, but didn't know how to tell my husband at the time that I needed help, and I didn't know how to help myself. Didn't want to really shame him anymore. Like I felt like I was bringing all the shame upon him. Didn't want to, I'd come back, visit the girls, steal a few prescription pads, spread those prescriptions around town, pick them up, go back to New Orleans. And so we went to a car show. This guy and I went to a car show in Lake Havasu, and we wake up the next morning. He's a drunk. I didn't know this until, we moved back here. Well, I did know it, but we still moved back here. And he's sleeping next to me, and we're in this funky hotel room, and he's sleeping and snoring, and he's drunk, and I've got pills hidden in the sheets of all the bed next to us, and I'm up in the middle of the night, trying to take pills, trying to go to sleep. And I thought, this was February of 2015, and I thought, I cannot do this one more day. I can't. I'm trying to die, and I won't die. I keep waking up, and it just wasn't, getting any better. And I knew I didn't want to live like that. The police started getting called to my house. He was verbally abusive, and he was starting to get aggressive with me. He never really punched me, but I thought one of us is going to die. And then I thought, it's not going to be me. I'm going to end up killing this man if I don't get rid of him. So, I come in here. I'd had a couple of sponsors from here. One of them wanted me to go horseback riding. She thought somehow that was going to keep me sober, and of course that didn't work because I had just watched her ride horses. And then the second one, we just talked about, ghost hunting and things like that, so I knew that wasn't going to work. And I saw this woman, little tiny woman, and she'd come in here and she just had this kind of swagger. And I thought, man, she just looks like life is a ball. She just looks like she's just so comfortable with herself and so comfortable in her own skin, and I want that. She just looks at peace, and she would share, and everybody would laugh, and everybody couldn't wait till she got to the rooms. And I hadn't laughed in a long, long time, And so I asked her to be my sponsor, and she's asking me about, what my living situation is, and I'm supporting this guy. We're living in this 3-bedroom house. I'm paying for everything, and he doesn't want to work, and I'm starting to run out of money, and that's pissing me off. And so she said, you got to get rid of this guy. I said, all right, done. This is the first time, I felt like I had found somebody who was going to guide me in the right direction. I had looked in the mirror, and I thought, what happened? You had this family, you had these daughters, you had this marriage. I've been married over 20 years at this point. You had this career. What happened to you? You spent a long time trying to gain these things, and you've just destroyed everything. So I wrote him a letter and told him he had to leave, and there was a lot of fighting about that, but I was like, no, you have to go. This is it. You have to go. She says you have to go. You're going. So he went, and I was like, you need to go. TikTok, it's time to go. So, I started taking suggestions, and I started doing what she told me. And, I could get that I was powerless over alcohol and drugs, but I could not get that my life was unmanageable. And that took me a long time to get. That took me probably 17 years to get, that I was powerless over my life and that my life was unmanageable. I came to believe, I always believed in God, but I didn't believe in the God that I believe in now. God was going to get me, and I was going to run as fast as I could to get away from that. I didn't want to have to really think about God, and I didn't. And so when I came into the rooms, especially this room, they talked about God a lot. There was one gentleman that came here a lot, and his God was actually Garfield the cat. And so we'd go around the table. It was hard for me to share then. It's kind of hard for me to share now, but it was really hard for me to share then because I always cried. And I did that for probably 2.5, 3 years. And I couldn't talk about God. It was getting better inside, my beliefs, but I couldn't verbalize that. And I didn't want to verbalize it. Maybe I was afraid that if I verbalized it, it wouldn't stay like that. So I came to believe quickly, but slowly, if you were looking at me. I made a decision, but I really didn't want to share it with anybody. Like I said, if you talked about spirituality of God, I always passed, and I did that for probably 2 years. I did do my 4-step pretty quickly. Not that she was pushing me, but I'd had relief before when I did that in treatment, and I knew that if I just get some of this stuff down, especially some of the stuff with my mom, because I didn't get a chance to straighten that out, that I would somehow feel better. So I did my 4-step, and it came to the 5th step, and she gave me a choice. She said, well, I can read it, or you can read it to me. And I thought, well, I'm going to take the easy way out. Why don't you just read it? So she read it, and that was good with me. And she was pretty good about it. She'd probably done a lot worse things than I'd ever done. No, I'm teasing. But, it's to get rid of all that shame and guilt, to clear that passage to God. I knew it had to be done, but I didn't want to do it. And when I got down to the fact that, girl, you're going to die. You're going to die, and your daughters, that you've never really been a mother to, are never going to have a chance to have a mother. So I knew that I had to do it to live. 6 and 7, still there's character defects that God's working on, and a lot of times she tells me that, if it's funny and it's not hurting anybody, it's okay. So, I didn't laugh for a long time, and I laugh a lot with this bunch over here. 8, had my list. 9, my biggest amends were to my ex-husband, because, I knew that if I stayed with him, I would never get clean and sober. And so we're to my ex and my husband, and some other ones I cleaned up along the way. But more will be revealed, as they say, if I need to do more. 10. I still talk with her a lot about that, pretty much. If not on a daily, I talk with her on a daily basis, but I pretty much, if I feel bad about something, I talk to her about it right away. And I'll make amends if I need to. 11, I'm just, when COVID happened, my oldest daughter started living with me again because she's going to nursing school, and my youngest daughter was graduating college. So her and her roommate moved in, and we got really busy at my house. So I was only Zooming. I only Zoomed like a couple meetings, and I stopped doing the things that I was doing on a daily basis. I stopped doing my readings. I stopped praying. I stopped meditating. And this summer, I really got in a funky place, and it really could have turned out badly if I didn't get back to what was keeping me clean and sober in the first place. And then 12, she got me involved in service right away. When I first came to this room, I didn't really like to talk to people, so I would wash the table down, or I would rearrange the chairs, or I would do whatever, because everybody wanted to talk to her, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. So she got me into a lot of service work and going to different meetings. My life has changed so much. I've gotten to travel with her and her partner. We've been to Chicago. We've been to Oregon. I've met grandkids. I've met high school friends. And it's really been a joy, because I didn't know why I was coming to Prescott, Arizona, but I believe this is why I came to Prescott, Arizona, because I couldn't get sober in any other town. And I'm so eternally grateful for that. And Phyllis over here with the purple hair has celebrated 20 years today in a different program. So I want to say congratulations. And she told me a few years ago, she said, I've been praying for Kristi to get sober. Kristi's her daughter. And she said, God ended up sending you here. Thank you.
Thank you.